Okay, so we're going to try running through a demo of setting up a plugin in 3 different methods. So we've got Telegraf here. I've checked out the repo. I've got a bunch of changes. So I started here just writing my plugin right into Telegraf because I think that's a lot of what people would do, especially if you think your plugin might get merged into the Telegraf repo. You're probably starting this as a pull request and making some changes. So under plugins and inputs, if we go down, I have this one here called brand, and it's one I made. It's not very exciting. It's a random number generator, and all it does is generate random numbers. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. It takes a couple of arguments like what value you want to write it out to, what's the min and max value that you want to see, and how often you want the value to be sampled if you're running it as a service. And I think I wrote this to work either as a service, so it responds to the start function, or as a polling one, so you can just say gather. And each of them eventually call send metrics. Start's got the logic to like do polling and stuff, or to do the weighting for the right amount of sample frequency time. But ultimately, they both call send metric, which generates a random number between your values and writes it out to a field at measurement random. You can't configure that at the moment, and then using the value name that you specify. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. So let's I guess let's set up a config here and make sure this works. So let's go create a new file. We'll call it telegraf.conf. Okay, and we're just going to make it really simple. We're going to say output to file, and file that we're outputting to is just a standard out. Okay, and then just gonna, I think this is the default, but we're gonna ask for influx line protocol. And then we're just gonna say, use the one rand input that we declared here. Okay, so value name, value name was value, and we'll say min 0, max 100. We'll start off with that, and I'll put sample frequency in case I use it. And we'll set that to every second. Okay, so at this point it's pretty simple. We should just be able to start it up. So start Telegraf, and we'll say the config we want to use is telegraf.config. Okay, well, that should work, hopefully. Let's see if it does. Okay. It's going to take a second to compile. And just to get that plugin to work, what I did is I went to input all, and I added rand to the list. Otherwise, oh no, maybe I didn't. Okay. You know, I think the Telegraf comp didn't end up where I expected. Let's just go see. Yeah, it's in the wrong folder. That's okay. I'm going to say move that file to here. Okay. Now I might have another problem is it needs to be in here, otherwise it's not going to pick it up. So let's add rand to the list. Okay. That's okay. We deleted that, but we just moved it. Okay, I'll open it in a second. Okay, so if all works correctly. Oh, I have a typo. Okay, so let's go open this here. Okay. Okay, it's better. You can see loaded inputs is rand. And here's some random values. So it's the random metric, and it's setting value to the random number that it's generated. Okay, so it's pretty good. Kill that. Now, that's kind of the most common way. I mean, if you're doing a pull request and to Telegraf, then that's probably what you're going to do. Now, it might be that you have too many dependencies, or the project's too big, or it's you know, very esoteric, that people are, you know, generally more interested in special cases. You could want to move it out to an external plugin. This is also very valuable if you don't want to contribute it back to the Telegraf repo. Maybe it's got some proprietary stuff in it, but you don't want to have to maintain a fork of Telegraf to be able to do it. Okay, so let's see what that might look like. So let's go back to all, and we'll remove rand from the list. Okay, so you can no longer load it from here. We're going to leave the configuration the same, but just for example, I'm going to set it 100 to 200 so we can see that we're actually loading it differently. And okay, so at this point, it's not going to load if I try and run it, but we're going to try and fix that. Okay, so let's go to rand, and let's just, we're going to move this folder into something similar on my own project. So let's make directory. Let's see, where are we? Okay, we're going to make something here called rand. Okay, and then we're going to let's I guess we'll move the plugin inputs rand folder. Okay, we're going to move everything in that folder to Soroka rand. Okay, so now we're going to hit into that folder. Okay, so we've now got a new external plugin. Okay, so there's a couple of steps we need to do to make this run as an external plugin. We need to create a main.go, or I think we call it a all.go. It doesn't really matter, I don't think. Okay, and I opened up the whole github.com repo inside the Go path, so I can just go right to here, and here's the new folder that I just created. Okay. So the thing we need to do here is we need to add the import for it. So something like github.com. Rand, and then I think what we need to do is match the plugin structure. I'm not 100% sure if that's true, but yeah, it's kind of good to do, I think. Okay, so something like that, and then you want to put in this main function just so that you don't have issues later. It's not really that important. Okay, so let's just make sure. Okay, so our paths don't match. So I kind of want it to match. It's kind of nice if you wanted to support multiple plugins. I guess it's not necessary, but let's do it anyway. Oops. Okay, and we'll move Rand into there. Okay, so the nice thing about this is the plugin itself doesn't need to change. Okay, so this this plugin was built off of an example, especially now, example off of this Daniel Nelson Telegraf plugins. If you go look there, you'll see an example of how to make an external plugin. So it's basically what we've ended up with after we've added this all and moved it into the plugins inputs folder. Okay, so at this point, we should be able to compile this. So let's try compiling this. We're going to build the file to a shared object, and I'm just going to throw it in. I made a temp folder called Telegraf plugins just to throw this in. We're going to call it rand.so, and you have to say build mode plugin. Okay, and then build the current project. And if all goes well, it'll compile. Can't find plugin. This match plugins inputs. So let's figure out where this path problem is. Oh. I'm supposed to create a new folder for Rand. All right, there we go. Okay, so let's try the build again. Oh, that's the wrong one. Build Rand. Okay, internal, use of internal package, Telegraf internal, not allowed. What did I use that for? Internal duration. This is a good question. Let's try time duration and see if this works. Might cause me some problems later. Well, that ends the demo. Okay, so let's just remove the sample frequency for a minute and hard code it. It sucks, but or we'll just comment it out. Sorry, it's I don't have access to that internal package there. So, okay, there we go. We managed to build the plugin. Okay, so let's go back to the Telegraf folder now. And we need to build Telegraf as well when we're building an external plugin. So let's, let's also do that. Okay, so we'll want to go run, and you have to say tags plugin, Go plugin, because the Go plugin stuff is not built by default because it adds a lot of size to the binary. So include the Telegraf Go. We'll say the config we're running, and we're going to say load the plugin from the plugin directory, which is temp Telegraf plugins. Okay. So if all goes well, this will run the plugin we just compiled. Okay, air loading plugin. Plugin was built with a different version of package inputs. Okay, so this is a common problem. Okay, so switch back, and we're going to go mod init. Okay, so we created a go mod here, and let's build this again because it's going to fill up our go mod. Okay, so I think the issue is we need to say replace github.com/influxdata/telegraf with the path to the Telegraf. So this is the path to my Telegraf. Okay, so we save that, go back, and build again. Okay, so now they're built okay. Okay, very interesting. Okay, so now if we build here, is that right? Should work. The reason it's important to build both of them is because you want to make sure that these dependencies are sorted out. Okay, error parsing Telegraf conf sample frequency. We took out support for sample frequency. I think this is something I'm going to resolve later. The internal duration is not exposed outside of the project, so if you're depending on it, it causes some problems. I think there's an open issue to make that so that's not part of the internal folder, and we'll resolve that later. But let's see if this works. And getting close to our flush interval. Here we go. There we go. Looks beautiful. We've got random numbers between 100 and 200. Gorgeous. Okay, so now this is coming from the standalone compiled binary. So it's in temp Telegraf plugins, rand. You see there's this static object thing here that is running our rand binary. So it's like it's a standalone thing. So that's option two. Is so option one we did was compiling it into the app. Option two is compiling a standalone linked object or static object that runs along with Telegraf without having to fork Telegraf. Unfortunately, you do have to do your own build of it, but you don't necessarily have to do the go run every time. You could just build it once with the tags, and you'd be able to run that binary with any number of plugins. Okay, so there's a third option now, which is execd. Execd is Let's go look at the README. execd is a new plugin that's it's an input right now, and we're going to be extending it to processors and aggregators and possibly outputs. And what it does is it'll run an external process that's its own binary, and it will leave it running, and it will get metrics. The input gets metrics from standard out from the binary. And there's two options for how you tell it when to send the metrics. There's none, which means Telegraf is not going to poke the binary when it's supposed to send metrics. It's just going to expect the binary to know when to send the metrics. So this is fine if you're doing, a standard delay or something. You can also accept standard in, where the plugin will send a message, a new line on standard in every time the plugin is supposed to send new metrics. Or you can support signaling with SIGHAP or user1. Probably user1 is the better option, but Telegraf will send this signal to your process every time it's supposed to write metrics to standard out. So we're gonna try and convert this plugin to a standalone binary. So let's see what that would look like. I think I started this already. So if we go look at rand command, I think there's I did start this already. I think there's maybe it'd be more interesting if we did it in another language. So let's make oh, I don't know. I think we have one already. I think there's one that comes with the execd that we can just work with. So let's take this count RB. So this is a scripting language, so it's a completely different language, which is kind of cool. And just copy the path to that. And I'm just going to run it in place. All this does is start counting and sleeps for a second. And it looks like it does not use any signaling, so we'll configure it for that. Let's go back to our Telegraf config. We will add inputs execd, and this one takes a command, so you have to tell it what the command to run is. And we're going to say run the Ruby command with the path to the count, so I don't even have to move it. And then I think that's enough. We could see what that does by itself. Okay, so this is what the plugin is going to do. Set the right command. Okay, and we can tell it that we don't want any signaling, so signal is none. Okay, so let's turn off the rand because we're not using it at the moment. And let's try this. Okay, so let's go back to the Telegraf folder and let's run this. Now this one's not a plugin, so we don't need to say anything about plugins. We don't need to compile the Go plugin stuff. We just run it with our config, and we will see what happens. So what it should do is spin up the process, and it should be running in the background, and just stream the metrics to here. So we'll see that, and then I'm just going to suspend the process once it's output some metrics, and we can look. Okay, so you can see, it's outputted 20 lines already. So Control Z suspends the process, and we do PS, and we can see that there's the Ruby command we ran running as its own process. Okay, so that's it. Those are 3 different ways to run plugins.